One of the things I try to help people understand and I try to encourage them on is that mindset is ultimately a choice. It doesn't mean that the choice is always going to be under easy conditions. Now, there are all sorts of conditions, and especially when we're talking to patients or people with chronic conditions that have created disabilities or a decrease in activities of daily living. And under the hard circumstances, it makes it so much harder to choose positive outlooks, to choose optimism. But the patients that do the best are the ones that are able to choose optimism and to choose to have a positive outlook. You can choose to be happy and you can choose to be extremely grateful for the smallest things. And those are the lessons that I'll never forget. And so when I go talk to other high performers, I remind them that this is a choice.
Right.
Have to find the reasons to enjoy the life we have, and we can.
I'm Haley Pomeroy, #1 New York Times bestselling author and the assistant director of the Integrative Medicine program at the Institute for Neuroimmune Medicine. Today, we're going to talk a lot about optimal performance, about sleep, about the biology of stress, things that I'm sure are affecting each and every one of you. But in order to do that, I have two very, very special guests. First, I'd like to introduce Jaime Tartar. Dr. Tartar, you are a PhD here at Nova Southeastern. You're the department chair of psychology and neurosciences. You're a neuroscientist that studies a lot of the biology of stress and sleep. Jaime, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. And it's not just the two of us today. We also have Julius Thomas. Julius, you have a master's in psychology and a doctorate in psychology. I love that I'm talking to you guys like I'm telling you all about yourselves. I'm telling our community how cool all of this is, and that I'm just really excited to get to spend this time together. You are a lifelong athlete, right? A former NFL athlete, and your focus is really on optimal performance of the body, right?
Yeah, so I'm not a doctor yet. I'm working on it. I start my pre-doctoral internship this fall, so I'm 6 years into the program, but can't wait to be one day. But yes, so my focus is really on understanding the connection between the mind and the body, and thinking about health and well-being from a prevention and a performance perspective, as opposed to just a clinical one, because I think it gives a lot of insights and it helps people wake up and be able to do more of what they enjoy and with the people they enjoy doing things with.
That's amazing. And so you're taking that passion and your goal and your plan is to go into a doctoral program?
No, so I'm already in one. So I got my master's degree in root is what they call it. So I'm almost done. I have 2,000 clinical hours just to finish, and then I get my stamp and I can be Dr. Thomas.
That's amazing. That's exciting. I'm inspired. As you know, I'm in the middle of the PhD program here at the Institute in Neuroimmune Medicine, and it's just such a rewarding. I think it's a rewarding process in itself, but especially when it's things that we're super passionate about. Dr. Tartar, I want to start with you for just a moment. I know that you're the department chair, but can you just give me a little bit of background about how you got into this space and what motivated you into this passion?
Sure. Actually, I'm a little bit weird for a neuroscientist, as you probably know, because I'm a neuroscientist that studies humans as a model for humans, which people may not realize. Most neuroscientists use rodent models. The good thing about rodents is we're allowed to take out their brains and look at them. And when you try to do that in a human, all kinds of terrible things happen to you. So generally frowned upon.
Right.
So, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. I've always been interested in what makes humans behave the way they do, what makes humans tick, just understanding human behavior. But I'm not very creative, so I really needed to stick to the biological level of what makes humans tick. So for me, really understanding sort of the nuances of stress and sleep just makes so much sense. These two things really impact each other. It's what most of us as modern humans are really struggling with. And actually, since I met Julius, is really around that time that I started getting really interested in human performance, which I think evolves kind of naturally from that, stress and sleep space. We actually, met coincidentally, and it was right around the time where I started talking to another friend of ours about this interest in sport performance. And then we coincidentally met, and sometimes you meet someone, you're like, hey, I think I already know you. And so it was just perfect timing. And we started doing some of the sports neuroscience research together. And that's been super, super duper exciting.
Hey guys, it's Haley again. Right about now, you might have questions that pertain to you and only to you. Let's continue the conversation. Go to haleypalmer.com/member and get a free 30-day trial of my membership community. You're going to love this place. Post your questions, ask your questions, grab some downloads, and let's get you the help you deserve.
Someone said the other day to me that sleep is free, right? Yeah. It can't be bottled. It can't be really prescribed. Although I think with some of the sleep study tests, there are people that are, starting to get the prescription or write down, or at least have some idea of what they should strive to for stress. But I think, and Dr. Klimas, we were talking about this the other day with the ME/CFS patients, that if we could master sleep, or we could at least put the priority on sleep that it deserves, we could probably eradicate 60% of the diseases that people are dealing with. And it blew my mind, because I thought, and they said, well, the brain, detoxes during the sleep and all of these things, the blood sugar re-regulates. Talk to me a little bit about, I want to jump into stress, but I want to talk about sleep, both in the fatigue or the diseased body. And then I want to talk about sleep from an optimal performance perspective, just to throw that out there.
Before we jump on the sleep, I really wanted to talk about what you just said, because I think it's an important thing to stress. I've read research that shows with healthy lifestyle behaviors, we could reduce or prevent up to 80% of chronic illness diseases. And when I saw that research, I was like, wait, well, why am I doing so much clinical stuff if this is going to be so good at helping people to live better lives? And I just really wanted to emphasize that for the listeners, because when you understand the value of the healthy lifestyle behaviors, it gives you that extra little incentive to do the behaviors that are going to make a big difference for your health and well-being in the long run. So now you can add,
I'm going to jump in that really quick. That's profound. What you just said is profound, and you doubled down on the thought. And I just want to punctuate that for our listener here for a second. Also, the practitioner has to endorse that, right? I had a client the other day that came back and they said, they want me on these medications and they don't want me to eat, like it was tomatoes or something. And I said, did they also say to cut out, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, diet sodas, and get some rest? No. They just said sometimes people that have some inflammation shouldn't eat tomatoes. And I was just like, So what you said, I just want to get huge billboards, put it out there, and implore our frontline practitioners to value that, to value it. And I'm amen. I'm with you 152 million %. And so we're going to jump into sleep. We're going to solo it just a little bit, because lifestyle, we could go down all kinds of things, stress reduction, food. If we just talk about the sleep and what happens biologically in the body when we don't have sleep, or why do we need sleep? I'm convinced I'm one of those genetic people that only need 5 hours, by the way. 6 and I'm like on fire. I try really hard. I force myself to sleep more, but I want to learn more about it.
Yeah. And you're right. There's some people walking around, they're 7 feet tall. The genes that we inherit from our parents mostly determine the sleep duration that we need, but you'd be super lucky. It is probably the statistics like being 7 feet tall, but there are some people that don't need as much sleep as other people. For most of us average human beings, we say 7 to 9 average, hitting around 8. But if we think about, humans have been on Earth for about 300,000 years, right? 300,000 years. If we look at hunter-gatherer populations as kind of a lens into how much sleep we need, they're sleeping around, 8 hours a night. And
right.
Think about what our lifestyle has been like for most of human existence. Sleep is pretty dangerous for most organisms on Earth. Sleep is a dangerous time.
Ooh.
You're really vulnerable. You're vulnerable to predation. You're not hunting. You're not mating. You're not doing all these fun things that you could be doing. And so we didn't need 8 hours of sleep. This would be the stupidest thing that evolution ever did, would be to put you down and make you vulnerable for 1/3 of your life, right? So it's sort of silly.
So it's not a luxury, or else we wouldn't do it.
it's non-negotiable. You can't train yourself to sleep less. You can't sort of practice sleeping 5 hours a night and get good at it. The amount of sleep you need it's just really biologically determined. But on the other side of that, sort of recognizing it's not a waste of time either. We're spending a third of our life doing it. Mm-hmm. What happens when you sleep? Only good things happen to your body and brain when you sleep. Sleep is, by the brain, of the brain, for the brain. Julius and I were just saying at lunch yesterday that you wouldn't, if you think about this idea, like you had mentioned, cleaning your brain. Sleep is the optimal time to do that. And in order to really clean your brain, you have to shut it down. You don't change the oil in your car when your engine's running. You don't do that more than once.
Yeah.
You really need a time to shut the brain down. If you look at the brain parenchyma, like the matter of the brain, it changes in such a way that you can really clean out some of those toxic metabolic waste products. Other things happen too. And one of my good friends, and I'll steal his turn of phrase. Actually, I think we're friends. He wouldn't think we're friends, but he likes to say that sleep is the Swiss Army knife of health. And I agree with that. There's anything wrong with you, good sleep will make it better. Anything that you want to improve, good sleep will improve it. So certainly, brain cleaning, we can look at memory consolidation happens during sleep. Emotion processing, if you want to be emotionally well, you have to sleep. And really that comes in that second part of the night sleep. So the second part of the night,
wow.
Really focusing on emotional wellness, emotional processing. And for those of us that are in the sport performance world, if you want to release testosterone, you sleep between 6 and 8 hours, you can double the amount of testosterone you release. So for muscle gains, human performance, sleep it's magical. It's one of the best performance mechanisms on the planet. So I feel
appreciate.
I'm selling sleep. I don't get any kickback from Big Sleep.
I'm completely sponsored by sleep. No. What you just said, I just want to punctuate that a little bit because sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, I feel like sleep is a waste of time. I have so much that I want to do in life, right? And there's never enough hours in the day. When you tell me that sleep is never a waste of time, I actually, my shoulders kind of relaxed a little bit. You just gave me permission to go hard, do it big. But now you just gave me all the benefits of it. Now I want to be like a world-class sleeper. I really do, because I also recognize in what you just said that a lot of the things that you can achieve during sleep, you cannot achieve during wake. Times of being awake, right? It's not possible. It's not like, well, I could get it when I sleep, but I might as well go ahead and grab it while I'm awake. It's not possible. It's not physiologically possible. And a couple of things you just said, like creating balance with emotionality. I always love that time before I don't know very much about sleep, except for I always thought it was a little bit of a waste of time. My mom used to say she'd have to literally put her fingers over my eyes. It's been that way all my life. As I've aged and I'm realizing how to better care for myself, when I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, it was one thing that my doc did. My rheumatologist just kept saying, you've got to manage your sleep. You've got to manage your sleep. Life is going to happen, whether you're asleep or awake, you've got to manage your sleep. That time, that second half, why is that so special?
So that's really one of the reasons why we want to focus on sleep continuity, because when we're in the first part of the night sleep, we're getting a lot more deep sleep. And that's where a lot of the memory consolidation, that brain cleaning happens. But as we get closer and closer to morning, we spend more time in REM sleep. So this is where we have those kind of vivid, scary, bizarre, like you're on a dinosaur, your third grade teacher's there, you're carrying cheese.
And you forgot your slippers.
Yeah, just really, really bizarre dreams. and they may seem silly, but your brain does something gentle. It scares you, or usually they're kind of scary. It paralyzes you during this time, but it also decreases adrenaline or epinephrine levels. So you don't feel the same fear, and you get to kind of play out emotional processes during sleep. And when we take that REM sleep, that rapid eye movement sleep, away from people, we do see daytime emotion dysfunction. And it's if you add all those REM sleep bouts together, in most people that adds up to about 90 minutes. So your body's willing to paralyze you and scare you 90 minutes a day just to make sure that you are emotionally well.
Wow. That's profound. That's big. That's, at least for me, that's big. I'm sure everybody's listening to it going, Julius, when you're looking at optimal performance and you're, running or lifting weights or talking about nutrition to individuals, how important is sleep in that prescription?
Well,
You have to say important.
Yeah, exactly. I really have
wait. Jamie, don't listen. La 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 la. Food first.
I've got this really amazing job and role that I have of getting to work with some of the most elite organizations and teams and high performers and teaching them the intricacies of mental performance and habit building and how to structure your day. But I never forget to tell them that the three most important things that you can do for yourself are to exercise, sleep, and have a healthy diet. I mean, if you're able to just nail that, how far you will be down the road of optimal performance or preventative well-being is crazy. And, some more stats and data, because I love to share these things, but there's currently, yeah, it is. I'm a big nerd, thanks to,
I was just going to say nerd alert, but I didn't want to say it. Here we go. I get excited. Nerd alert.
Data, it can be alarming.
Data's dope. That's what I always say in our team. Data is dope. Okay, please go.
It's heartening though, because there's only 3% of the US population that gets the recommended physical exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress management, and healthy substance use. And so 3% of people are getting the foundational basics right. So I always stress the basics. Sleep is so important. Some of the things that I really grabbed onto about sleep, especially when you start to understand the lymphatic system. And I know JT could talk more about that. But, once I started to realize that we have these brain flushes that are happening at night while we're sleeping, I just started to have this visual of New York City. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I go to New York City, I find it kind of strange because I'm from California and, we're environmentally friendly-ish. And they would throw the garbage on the sidewalks, right?
Yes, in the bags and sometimes split open.
Yeah, and then the rats, the size of raccoons, they're surviving off the garbage bags. But what was very interesting is they collect the trash in the middle of the night in New York, and which is very different for me because here in Florida or in California, they always come pick up the trash in the mornings. But then it started to really click. This is what's happening when you're asleep. They're too busy. There's too many cars on the road to be wasting time sending trash trucks to go pick up all the byproduct from the bazillion people in Manhattan. But your brain's the same way. As we produce the byproducts from whatever we're doing cognitively throughout the day, our brain doesn't have the time to clean it out while we're on the job. So when we're sleeping, we're getting these, it's almost like the street sweepers are going through and they're cleaning up our brains and helping sustain the neurons. So that's one of the things that I always think about and one of the visuals that I keep in my mind that makes me get in the bed and try to get my 7 hours.
Hey guys, it's Haley Pomeroy, your host. Right about now, you're probably struggling to achieve the health that you deserve, and you're just not sure what you need to do in order to get it. So what I've done is I've created a special link for you that will give you the nutrition and supplement programs that I use in my private practice to achieve amazing results for my clients and my community. Go to haleypomeroy.com/podcast. Plus, when you use that link, you'll get a 20% discount just because I love you. Again, that's haleypomeroy.com/podcast. Now, back to the episode.
We talk about sleep hygiene. We talk about, ways to induce sleep, ways to help our bodies. I mean, because sometimes it's a little easier said than done, right? You need sleep. Some people can't sleep. And here at INM, would you say 30%?
It's about the roots of insomnia, which is
Yeah. I the other day I was flying and I was lucky enough to have what I call the sleepy seats, right? That go lay down all the way. And the stewardess came over and she said, you laid down as we were going down the runway and you never moved until I came and had to tell you I can sleep anywhere, which is great. So that's, I've always said, I'm very lucky that way. But at the Institute here, we talk about with people that have ME/CFS or chronic inflammatory disorders or COVID, long COVID, if we can get their sleep mastered, every medication or therapy is going to be more effective. And I love your analogy about the street sweeping, because that is something that visually is going to stick with all of us, I'm sure. When a person can't sleep or they have insomnia, is there something that do we just go in a multi-pronged approach, or do we just kind of go, well, let's work on everything else and hope that somehow manifests itself? Or what are you guys seeing that can make the biggest impact in insomnia?
Like, I think what Julie said, a lot of people suffer from insomnia, and a lot of people have difficulty going to sleep. And with sleep, we say all these things happen when you sleep, you clean your brain, but not in a way to scare people. Like for me, I sleep pretty well, but importantly, I'm getting it right most of the time. Like, I don't get it right every night. I have
right.
And that's okay, right? Just getting it right most of the time is sort of good enough for sleep. But when people are getting it wrong most of the time, they're having difficulty sleeping, a lot of people just sort of live their lives, and we don't really think of sleep as health. If I'm a big baby, right? So if my chest started hurting, I'd be at the cardiologist right away.
Right.
I had chronic migraines. I bet your bottom dollar I'd be at the neurologist. But a lot of times we spend years struggling with sleep, and we don't think about this as health, and we don't think about something that's treatable. And so really importantly, many sleep disorders are treatable. So nobody should be walking around with excessive daytime sleepiness that hasn't been evaluated. Nobody should be having chronic insomnia that hasn't been evaluated. And the good news is, because, I could say like, well, you can't sleep, too bad. You're going to have a lifelong problem. but we're not.
No, yeah.
Is that insomnia is extremely treatable.
Yep.
And I love recognize it, take the time to recognize it, take the time to get an adequate workup. Our philosophy is, in the nutrition space, we feed for sleep, we feed for fitness, we feed for energy, we feed for libido, we feed for stress reduction. Every single thing we do is nutrient dependent, and sleep is actually a very nutrient dependent event also, right? I always think it's interesting that we lose all our weight while we sleep, right? To your point, we boost our testosterone when we sleep. We get our cortisol surge 30 minutes after we wake. There's a lot that's going on in the endocrine system and in systems in general, and it's all nutrient dependent. So I'm a big feed for sleep. I'm going to jump into stress for a second, because we can make efforts towards sleep, and I'm glad, and I really do think it's some of the neurocognitive space, in my opinion, that's pushing to the forefront the importance of sleep, right? When we're seeing lack of sleep with things like Alzheimer's, with cognitive issues, I think people are afraid of that being their destiny. So they're taking sleep a little more seriously. I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but
accidents, cognitive performance, right? Like all these things are so related to sleep. I had a talk yesterday, and I was talking about pilots, right? Like the culture used to be, fly hundreds of people around the country as much as you can, work as long as you can. And then I think the FAA wanted to review, what leads to plane crashes. And they started to see that sleepiness. Yeah. And now they started to control how many.
Well, how about that?
Yeah.
I have a novel idea.
Or how many hours.
Just because you're willing to not sleep for 4 days doesn't mean you should be driving a plane. I love that. That's great. And in Southern California, have you seen the billboards that say sleepy driving is as bad as drunk driving? They're all, when I was driving, I was driving back from Vegas the other day, and I saw those all over the road, and I went, valid, good. I love that. So
per year caused by.
I'm going to talk. What'd you say?
I said, yes, there's a ton of accidents per year caused by sleepy driving.
Absolutely. When we talk about performance and peak performance, and you're looking or assessing an individual, do you kind of do these quadrants? Like, what's your sleep like? What's your stress like? How's your psyche, your belief system, your value system? Like, talk to me a little bit about some of that.
Well, that's a great question. One of the things that I think about when I assess someone's performance is, I always say the foundation of your performance is your well-being, right? And I used to always think that well-being was this add-on to performance. The bad habit of saying performance and well-being. And then I've actually changed it in the work I've been doing with my company. And now I say performance plus well-being because I don't want it to be an and. And it took me a long time of sitting in clinical classes to have my aha moment. And my aha moment was, wow, when I was a professional athlete and all the professional athletes in the world, they have this lead up to season. And the lead up to season is essentially trying to get as healthy as possible, is physically resilient or strong and well conditioned as possible to be able to make it through the rigors of a season. So then I thought, wait, so we were really just maximizing our well-being so that we could then perform. So if you think about an athlete, what's one of the worst things that can happen is you get injured. If you get injured, you can't play, your performance drops. So now one of my passions is to teach people in other spaces, people that are everyday workers or corporate professionals, that your performance sits on the foundation of your well-being. So we have to make sure that you're doing the basics. Are you exercising? Are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Are you reducing your stress? Are you managing or have healthy substance use? Okay, you're doing that. Now we can start to talk about what's your mindset, what's your goal setting strategies, how are you pursuing the things that are important to you? Do you have the right network and mentors and all the other stuff, right? Like the smaller details, but the well-being is truly the foundation of performance.
What do you do when people say that they can't address their stress?
That's a very interesting question because I've never heard a person say they can't address it. Every single time I've spoken of stress, people go, yeah, I just
stop it.
No, I haven't been doing it. And, it's my kid and what they have going on or my job, right? Like work-related stress is one of the most significant well-being challenges that we experience in especially the Western cultures. So most people are so happy that I mentioned stress. And then they immediately want to talk about their stressors. And I'm like, yes, you're doing the first part.
That's it. I love what you just said. That's the first step, right? Is acknowledging it and talking about it. Well,
Yep.
Why? Okay. I feel like I've got two. I'm not going to use the word nerd anymore. I'm going to say geek now. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like I have two brilliant people in front of me. They're going to help me explain this. Why does it help? I know there's talk therapy, but why does it help to talk about it? Is it a reflection? Does it get reflected back to you in a different way? Is it organized differently when it comes out of your head and through your mouth? But why sometimes when people when you call you call your girlfriend or your mom, I call my mom all the time and I talk through a process and I don't feel like I dumped on it, like she's holding it and carrying it down the street now, but it's like, oh, there's such a relief. Why? What happens in the brain?
You want to take it or?
You can go from a therapeutic perspective and I can.
Yeah.
So who's going to go first?
You go. Therapy always goes first.
Well, one of the things that I think we overlook oftentimes as people is the value of social support. Now, I'm not exactly sure from an evolutionary psychological perspective, but something about us being mammals and social animals, there is so much value in coping through social support. And it just has a profound effect on reducing a lot of the emotional load that we experience. But I also think there's a component of just processing, right? Like one of the things we do in a therapeutic environment is process with a person, just talk about what it's like. One of the valuable things that if you get really skilled at it is you start to mentally frame things, right? And for me, mentally framing is just accepting your circumstances as they are and then thinking about it in a way that's not, this is going to be the end of me and starting to reduce maybe that catastrophizing. But then you get this opportunity to insert the mindset that you have that helps you be positive and effective.
Being here at the Institute and really our purpose for doing the podcast was to give people hope when they're struggling and really some tangible things to help them, some tools, some labs to run, some doctors to see, some lifestyle modification that they can do. But one really critical thing when an individual's struggling is to keep a positive mindset. And I feel like sometimes, again, that's easier said than done. And I would love both of your perspectives on one, what's the importance of it? So you telling me that sleep is never time wasted, and how what amazing and cool things I can achieve while I sleep that I can never achieve while I'm awake. Like I want to be a sleeping overachiever now. What about mindset? Why is it important? Besides, like, if you're grumpy or I'm grumpy, I might impact my family, my loved ones, my colleagues' lives negatively. But what about, how does it reflect on my own personal person?
Yeah, and I think we probably have different things to say from our different backgrounds, and I think one of the things we want to recognize with sort of this, and to your point about being grumpy, being on your family, is give yourself a little bit of grace, in that regard, that you understand your brain's not always nice to you. Your brain has only one job, right? The only thing your brain needs to do is keep you alive. And it doesn't care if you're happy while it's doing that. The job of a brain isn't to make you happy. The job of a brain is to keep you alive, sometimes despite your happiness, right? And so we have, our human brains are really hardwired to pay attention to negative information over all other information, because this kept our ancestors alive. If you imagine, generations back, your early ancestor kind of walked down a pathway and the bushes were moving around and they thought, oh my God, it's a cute little bunny. My day is going to be so great. And it was a tiger, and they died, right? Our ancestors must have walked down that path and thought, oh my goodness, it's probably a tiger. And then whether it was a tiger or a bunny, there's a survival advantage to being ready for bad things to happen.
At least you're prepared. Yeah.
Yeah. All of our brains are kind of, ready. They're really little prediction machines, and they prepare for negative things, and we ruminate very easily, and we think about negative thoughts very easily. And that's the bad news. The good news is that there is some plasticity there available to us. So by doing things like what we were talking about before the episode, we know, and through a lot of really cool new neuroscience research, the neuroscience of gratitude, and the neuroscience of just basically, if you spend time with, and it sounds sort of hippy dippy, but there's so much good science behind this, practicing loving kindness moments, they're so important, and fostering and valuing those meaningful social connections. I was really lucky. I got to have lunch with Julius yesterday. He's one of my good friends. And, at the end of that lunch, I just felt so much gratitude for having that friend and for having that moment, and knowing that I've got this person I can always talk to, and I trust him, and we've got a great friendship. And so we want to do, and what we don't do well is savor that moment. So if I'm in my car on the way home, I just want to savor and take a moment to think about that and appreciate that. And we don't do that easily. We don't do it readily, but by practicing these moments, we can change our mindset and slowly change our brain and change our way of thinking.
I appreciate you saying that they're moments, because I think, and also that we are hardwired, and probably for just cause, to be aware of potential harm, and also to savor that, to let it grow roots, sink in, and create more from it. That's really
terrible at savoring the good moments.
Cool to me. Yeah. No, I'm making my own this is all for me to get making my own personal list of homework. But I really appreciate what you just said about that. One, savoring it, right? And then also just kind of seizing that moment in performance. Like, I love that we saw, there's so many, I just remember even when I was a kid watching sports psychology, right? Visualizing it going into the basket, visualizing, and also, like, when you see people break barriers, like, Boston Marathon was never run at this particular speed, but then once one person does, and the belief system that it can happen, you see so many other people do it. So I don't think it's just that everybody got faster on the day that one person broke that time record. I think that everybody believed that they could be faster.
I really believed I could run a 5-minute mile, and it didn't happen. And I'm disappointed in myself.
Maybe you can. We just need to alter the clock. We just need to you don't need to be double time. The time needs to be double time. So what do you teach people when they're looking at optimal performance, when they're looking at maximizing their passions and their life experiences, about mindset?
I think that's a great question. And one of the things I try to help people understand and I try to encourage them on is that mindset is ultimately a choice.
Ooh,
And
here's my pen. Okay, got it.
it doesn't mean that the choice is always going to be under easy conditions. Now, there are all sorts of conditions, and especially when we're talking to patients or people with chronic conditions that have created disabilities or a decrease in activities of daily living, right? Like these are really hard. And under the hard circumstances, it makes it so much harder to choose positive outlooks, to choose optimism. But the patients that do the best are the ones that are able to choose optimism and to choose to have a positive outlook. And I'll tell two stories because they're very core and they taught me so much. And sometimes your patients are the ones that teach you. And people oftentimes ask me about mindset, and they think that athletes have the best mindsets in the world. And I'm like, well, yeah, in some ways, but the greatest mental performance, the mental performers are the ones that I saw in the hospital sometimes. And there's a patient I had, he was about a late 50s, older male that had a terminal cancer diagnosis. And when I first came to see him in the hospital, he was extremely sad about his cancer diagnosis. And I thought he was sad about his life is going to end in some, within a year type period. But he was really sad that he wasn't going to be able to be there for his children. He had two sons, and that was making him most sad. And so we sat down one day and I asked him, if your sons are what's so important to you, how should you live with the time you have left?
Oh,
one of the things he said was, if I was living in a way to be there for them, I would go back to doing the things that we really like to do together. I said, so what are those things? We love having pizza nights together. We love watching whatever movies they watched. And then I asked him, I said, well, can you make the choice to do that with them and to do that with a positive spirit, knowing how much it will mean for them? And he ultimately said, absolutely. And you saw a
light switch,
profound switch happen. And then in that moment, I learned, wait, mindset is actually a choice. And it doesn't mean that I can make the conditions less tragic or sad or hard. But what he found was a reason why he could choose his joy, his optimism. And that's what I saw patients do. I mean, another patient I had, she was 20 years old and she was paraplegic. And I'll never forget this. She was sitting in a wheelchair and she had there's like a ring around because her head could not go too far the other way. And I was doing her intake interview and she was smiling throughout the interview. So I stopped her. I said, you know what? I need to know right now, how are you smiling? Like, honestly, because I can tell you, I've seen a lot of patients, and to be 20 years old, paraplegic, how are you smiling? And she said, well, I have so much to be grateful for. She said, I have such an amazing family, and I have a sister that loves me. And then in that moment, I recognized again, it's not your circumstances that define your mood. It's what you choose. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a choice. And I remember asking her, I said, so why'd you check yourself into the hospital? Because she was a person that she didn't have to go to the hospital. She came to the hospital and she said, I will be happy if I can get the goal of transferring myself from my wheelchair to the bed.
Wow.
If I can do that, that would be the most amazing thing. And then what I recognize in myself is like, I need to shift my perspective. Mm-hmm. Look what she's willing to see as happy and worthwhile and fulfilling. What she did was she took something that I would have taken for granted and said, this is my goal and this would make me feel amazing. But now we all have this opportunity. No matter what our circumstances, she taught me. I didn't teach her anything. She taught me that you can choose to be happy and you can choose to be extremely grateful for the smallest things. And those are the lessons that I'll never forget. And so when I go talk to other high performers, I remind them this is a choice.
Right.
Have to find the reasons to enjoy the life we have, and we can.
Right. Absolutely. And I love that it can be episodic too. Like sometimes I think that people feel like if they can't be happy 24/7, then why put in the effort? And we always say,
That's
like,
real.
if you, we say 10 minutes of gratitude, 10 minutes of attitude, meaning, gratitude, like listing, like she did, I'm so grateful for my family, for my friends, for my children. And then 10 minutes of how can I manifest that gratitude in action? And if that's all you can manifest in a day, that's okay. That can shift so much in your life. So that's awesome and amazing. So both of you, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is, again, my goal is to get people that are providing care to people that are dealing with chronic disease and illness to understand the magnitude of impact that sleep and stress reduction and mindset and lifestyle modification can make in health. And when you said 80%, it's like, could you imagine would be a miracle drug if we could bottle it and put it in a pill and, take it 8 times a day or whatever on a patch or an injection, it doesn't matter. But if we can get that anchored and grounded in our healthcare system, I don't know. I mean, I hope that would be amazing. But all the changes in healthcare come from the patient. They come from the consumer of healthcare. They come from the consumer of wellness. They come from the consumer of fitness, right? And in the louder and the more impact that they make on changes. So how can people engage with you guys? I know that both of you work in the nonprofit space. Are there any organizations that they can support or look into? We will put all the social media handles on here so people can follow you. If that would be really cool. We'll make sure that we connect, that way digitally, all of our platforms. But are there any particular organizations that you're working with that we can kind of look into or support or be involved with?
I run a nonprofit organization. It's called the Society for Sports Neuroscience. We're going to have a conference here at NSU early February 2025. I would love for you to come, maybe be a speaker.
Love it. Absolutely.
It's a great space. Julius is on our advisory board and
I'm the VP now.
Yeah,
I just want to be your friends. I want to drive away from lunch with you and anchor in the gratitude of being together. That's what I love. I love it.
One of the people that helped get the organization started. And so each conference, we have a lot of talks that are focused on kind of these themes for, optimal performance.
Right.
And not just about athletes. It's sort of performance for, everybody. And so we're at Society for Sports Neuroscience on Instagram.
I appreciate you saying that. And I was saying earlier, before we jumped on, this month, May, was 30 years of clinical practice, right? And I did work and have worked in the high performance sports athlete, high performance in front of the camera. I learned so much about individuals that expected, and there was a monetary gain, quite frankly, with maximizing their ATP production, their hormone production, that I was able to apply in my own space with autoimmune disorder or in chronic viral activation or long hauler. Because if you can see a body be maximized and you can see this vast difference, right, that happens when you maximize that body, that there's plasticity, there's adaptability in the human body. And so if we're not well, we can change, and we can change that. And how
organization does. So I think he has an organization that kind of works on that too, right? Mastery.
Yeah, share that with me.
I started a company called Optimal Performance with the goal of maximizing individual performance and well-being and team performance and well-being. And the way that I try to do that is through evidence-based scientific practices. And JT knows that this is one of my gripes. And I'm going to say it this way here on this podcast first. I have this saying that
just the one gripe. You're just good.
This is my biggest gripe, and I've found the way that I'm going to frame it, and I'm going to say it this way until the signal can cut through the noise. But your favorite influencer can kill you.
Oh,
and what I mean by that is we on as practitioners have to continue to do what you're doing with this podcast. Is we have to wander off into the social and the content making producing space so that we can provide high quality evidence-based information. So that is one of the founding principles of optimal performance is I want to be a voice and a trusted source of content that people can consume, that want to perform better mentally, that want to have preventative wellness, that want to have stronger relationships, that want to be able to achieve the goals that they set for themselves, push a little bit harder, find something inside of them that they can connect to that gives them the motivation to take more pain or to take on the challenges of life. And that is my big emphasis and focus. And it's really my mission to make sure that I continue to do that, because you said that people need hope.
People need help, and people need hope.
And I can't help but understand how many people need hope. And I know from working with patients in some really rough conditions, how hard it is to have hope. And sometimes hope must be borrowed. Sometimes you cannot manufacture your own hope. But the thing about hope is you can borrow it from somebody. The right person can come be
that
around.
Believes in you.
And
Yes.
put your arm around you.
Okay.
And so I want to give people hope, and I want people to know that they can improve. Whatever their baseline is, it's always different. A lot of times I do work with the best performers in the world and trying to push them to improve. But like you said, it's all a spectrum. The same thing was when I had an amputee patient, and I had to give them hope that they can do life minus that limb and push them to go to their rehab and improve.
Right. I had a client that, so I being in the autoimmune space, like I shared with you before, I was on my way to vet school. I was diagnosed with autoimmune disorder. I was put on Mepron, Imurin, 60 to 80 milligrams of prednisone a day until I started to lose the function of my right kidney. I had to find a different way. I was able to have phenomenal success. I haven't been on medication since my early 20s, which is amazing for me. And I had a client that was working towards her own health victory. She was diagnosed, Brigham and woman, she was diagnosed with dermatomyositis. And she said, "Do you really think I can get better?" And I said, "Why can I and not you?" Of course you can. Of course I believe that. And, I'm going, oh my gosh, I hope this works out. This works out. But I was willing to let her borrow that. And one thing, and that I try to tell, we do a lot of patient advocacy. And when we talk about mind shift set, I always tell the patient that they're the consumer, and I want them to have the mind shift that says, show me. So show me what evidence-based protocols we can implement. Teach me, right? I need to learn more about my body, and I need to be more educated about my body than anybody that spends 7 or even 3 hours with me every day. And then watch me, right? Let's make sure that there's a protocol for progress and we're going in a forward movement towards wellness. And that show me, teach me, watch me is evidence-based, right? I am the most valuable person in the room. Teach me, not you're the smartest person in the room. Dispense your wisdom upon me so that I can invoke it and embrace it within my body, and then watch me get well, right? So mindset in the patient, mindset in the performer. We're all performing every day. Even when we sleep, it sounds like. Thanks a lot. Now I'm going to be an overachiever sleeper. I appreciate that. But I just want to thank you guys so much for coming out here and talking to our community. And please, can I have you back? We could go another 3 hours, but I know the average listen time doesn't go that far. So I'd like to have you back. We can talk about more things, if you will. I would really love that. And I know our community is going to have a ton of questions. So we'll be able to kind of get together and answer some of those, please.
We'll trade you. You're going to come over to Sports Neuroscience, our conference, and then we'll
Absolutely.
We'll ask you to bring the other people that are motivated and
love it.
And more about humans. Optimization, really, and
we're here for. I think we both feel like, as scientists, and we there's an onus on us to do a better job of bringing information to people and stop just talking to each other.
Yeah.
Some of it sometimes feels selfish, and some of it sometimes maybe, like you said, borrowing that hope from other people throughout my life. I have to feel like I didn't go what I went through for no reason. My goal is to shorten the gap for other people. So shorten the gap, limit the struggle, and learn from my massive mistakes and hopefully some of the gems of what I've gained along the way, and give them access to people like you. It's really, really important. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.